Hey guys, what's up? Time for another game theory video or kind of just answering a question kind of video. Remember, if you like these kind of videos, remember to leave a silly comment, like, sub, share the video if you want to. It does help the channel. Super chat, PayPal, Patreon, whatever. Because you know my channel was, of course, recently flagged again, of course. And I saw an influx of haters. I think it's always funny that whenever I start to get like a more group of subs, I start these haters, these fake people start to come and start to try to talk shit. Like some of these comments like, oh, we would sub to you, but you're all about drama, which is of course complete bullshit, because this is like, then it's like, well, why didn't you sub to my channel for 10 years before this, when I tried to ignore people saying I was dying in the hospital, all this, that I supposedly faked all this stuff, I faked tournaments I won, I just tried to ignore it for 10 years. Why didn't you sub then? Of course, they don't answer that, right? You know, it's, if anything, like I said, not talking about it is one of the biggest mistakes I made, because now that I actually talk about it, sometimes I've actually gotten more subs. So anyway, remember, support the channel if you can, thanks. But the question I got asked was, would you ever make your own game? And of course, like any nerd, have I ever thought about making my own fighting game? I would assume any nerd probably has been like, oh, sweet, I would like to make my own fighting game, blah, blah, you know. So it's like, of course I would like to, but would I? Or could I? And you know, I've said this before, I don't even really think it's possible to make a completely new fighting game. And that's kind of the sad thing, right? Because of course I have thought of making my own fighting game before, and what kind of genre, I guess, or subset of a fighting game would it be? And I could, you know, I could tell you right now, if the Guilty Gear developers, if it was a Guilty Gear game kind of system, whatever it might be, you know what I mean? I could definitely, I could put out a few new characters that would be healthy for the game. I could tell. I could tell these characters are good. But could I make a complete roster of new characters? No, I don't think I could. You know what I mean? Maybe I just haven't thought about it enough, but I don't think I have that ability, right? That's why when I talk about a lot of game theory videos and everything like that, you know, I talk about, I am confident that I could improve a game, right? But could I actually make a new game from scratch? I don't think I could do that and have it be truly unique, right? And I guess that's me talking shit about myself, but at the same time, I don't think anyone could really do that, right? And, you know, so when I talk about how you would fix certain games, like, you have to even get complicated, right? Because let's talk about this. If I was going to make a new game, you would have to put a new system into the game, right? So if you watched any of those how I would change like Street Fighter videos, right, which is, I think it's probably over an hour long. It's kind of, you know, in depth, and I never even finished it. It's probably like an hour and a half actually, right? If you watch those videos, I actually talk about adding new systems to Street Fighter that have not been in a game before per se, right? And that would work, right? I've talked about how it could work and how it will work with those characters. But the thing is, those kind of systems that I talk about in those Street Fighter videos, those would what not work in another game. You know, logically speaking, you could not put those kind of systems that I talk about in that video in a Guilty Gear game, in a Marvel game, whatever it might be, right? Because obviously it just wouldn't work, right? So even when I've had ideas for new kinds of systems and stuff like that, the thing is, if I was going to make a game, I've said this before, I feel like I say a lot of good things about Guilty Gear, but it's really not my favorite game ever. But I just got to give credit where credit is due, because Guilty Gear is such like a happy medium of keeping a lot of the goodwill of Street Fighter while being a little bit crazy without going full blown like Marvel. So that's why I always think, when if I was going to make a game, it would be more like a Guilty Gear game, because I feel like Guilty Gear is that kind of perfect balance of goodwill of some Street Fighter with a little bit of craziness to be a little bit more free flowing potentially, right? So anyway, you know, and that's why I say, I've always said that one of the biggest you know, problems with Dragon Ball Fighter Z is it is so rare to actually have an opportunity to put a new spin on a fighting game, right? And I've said it at nauseum, really. The tug of war between fireballs, homing, dashing, and reflecting, that is a new gimmick in a fighting game that you can only get from Dragon Ball Fighter Z. And that is why it is so special, and that is why that game is such a drop ball, because that is not a a gimmick that can be in Street Fighter. It's not a gimmick that can be in Guilty Gear. It's not a gimmick that can be in Marvel. It can only be in your game. And that's why your game is special. And you should have your game show off the stuff that is only possible in your game. I mean, if you look at a game like Guilty Gear, look at things like RCs, FRCs, FD, all these fantastic subsystems in a sense, and those are things you can only get from Guilty Gear, and they are always on display. And that's a great thing about Guilty Gear when you can see that. And I've talked about why the dust loop saved Guilty Gear, because you saw a thing specifically in that game that was such a integral part of competitive play, even that casual players, even a casual audience, would have to see it, and it taught them Guilty Gear, right? That's why I like a game like Dragon Ball Fighter Z, because it actually has an opportunity to do something new. You want to have characters that can show off what is new in your game. And it's just so rare to have something actually legitimately new in a game. And, you know, when I've thought, could I make a game like, and again, that Street Fighter thing, right? Could I make, have I, in that theory video, how I taught strain, how I would change Street Fighter. You know what? I did say, here's a new system you could put in Street Fighter, and it would only work in Street Fighter. But to kind of tie up all the loose ends, if I was going to make a game, it wouldn't be a Street Fighter game, because I think Street Fighter should stay Street Fighter. These kind of core archetypical characters, I don't think you can really change these kind of character dynamics in a Street Fighter game. Even like, look at Capcom, what are they doing? They just, every time they put out a new character, it's basically just a rehash of one character added onto another character, some kind of mutant mix match. There's not even really new characters in Street Fighter, and, you know, on a certain level, there can't really be, because there's only so much you can do with that idea of a fighting game. And that's me, you know, I think Street Fighter is the most important game of all time, fighting game wise, so that's not a necessary knock on it. But it's just calling a spade. But again, if I was going to make a game, it would be a game with more of a, like a Guilty Gear kind of thing, because a good will of Street Fighter, but it's still a little bit crazy that you can be more spicy and you could add in certain new dynamics. But then at the same time, how would you actually add something new in a brand new system that really would show off the game? You know, that would be hard to do. And I wouldn't want to make a game that wouldn't have the new things to put a new spin. So that's why, you know, it's hard to say. For sure, like I said, I know I could improve games. I'm creative enough to be able to look at a game and know how to improve it, right? I mean, I'm creative enough to, 20 years now, I've been able to look at games and say how they're going to work without ever playing them. You know, I got that kind of, I'm a quick draw, I guess. I don't know what the fuck you would call me, right? But even then again, like I said, for the happy medium of Guilty Gear, could I, in my head, make up a few new characters that would be brand new? And you could even have Arc Systems be like, Clayton, come over. What are these characters we're going to put in a game? And you could, I know in my heart, you could look at these characters and be like, wow, those actually are new characters. But you know what? That's only a few characters. And I couldn't be able to make a full roster out of characters like that. And even when I've tried to, I've even felt it in my soul, I guess to say, that these characters are they're just paying too much tribute to old characters. And you know what? That's me talking shit about myself a little bit, but at the same time, who really can make new characters, right? Can you really make a new game with tons of new characters? I mean, there's only so much you can do with the fighting game, right? And on the final aspect of talking about how you would change fighting games and if I would make fighting games too, you know, a comment that I see in a lot of my videos when I talk about how I would change a game or certain characters, excuse me, I see people talking about, oh, they would want this, they would want that, they want this, they want that, blah, blah, blah. And a phrase that I should be using in some of these videos is, sometimes people are so concerned with if they could do something, whether or not they should do something. And that is definitely something you see with a lot of people when they talk about how they would change a game. And it's like, yeah, you could do all this. You could do all this. You could add that. You could add that. But then it's like, should you do that? And, you know, I don't think a lot of people actually look at video games logically speaking, because that's definitely something you see. You see a lot of people saying like, oh, you could do that. You could do that. You could do that. But it's like, at the end of the day, should you do that? And that's one of the things you got to remember. When I make a lot of my game theory videos, I'm coming at it from a logical perspective.
I don't have a specific horse in the race other than making the game the best it can be. There's no, I want this character to be the best. I want this character to be the best, right? And I think when some people look at games, they just want their character to be the best. They want them to do this. It's like they don't even care about, the whole thing at the end of the day, the whole game at a whole, right? So anyway, keeping my channel active. Remember, if you like the videos, support, blah, 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 blah. I still got to put out that other baby combo video, the full one, but, I don't know. My channel got flagged again, so probably got to wait a few days for this to go back to normal.